Australian rock band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are back with their newest album entitled Infest the Rat's Nest. This is their 15th studio album, coming out just 4 months after Fishing for Fishies, which is extremely impressive considering this is a total sound change.
This is surely one hardcore, heavy-duty metal album. They've experimented a little bit with metal before, adding elements of metal into their songs, but this time they've gone full on into the metal.
The influences are very clear here. You got bits of Metallica, Slayer, Motorhead, Black Sabbath, all of the classics.
And even though you're getting bits and pieces of all kinds of different classic rock and metal, it still has that unique sound that makes it sound like King Gizzard. It's still got its quirkiness, the psychedelics, and experimentation that they're known for. The production is really raw and dry, which gives it a timeless sound. This album sounds like it could have came out any time over the last 40 years.
The album opens with Planet B. This track really intros the genre and sound of this album. King Gizzard is always experimenting with different styles, and right off the bat here you get a really fun intro into the metal that this album's gonna be.
The song starts with an epic opening which acts as the perfect intro for this album, with heavy metal riffs, fast punk rock drumming, and a lot of fuzz and thrash.
You get your first taste on this song to the loud driving chord progressions and the fuzzy, suffocated guitars.
And if you're hearing this for the first time, you're definitely in for a surprise. Considering the band is always changing their sound, it always shocks you when you hear the first song, especially hearing them go down this heavy metal route. Welcome to hell, little boys.
You also get your first taste of the new vocals for this sound. The vocals are very stylized to fit this genre, and it really shows the range that he's capable of.
Yeah, most of the time he's singing in this very rough, hardcore, very gruff sounding vocal. Sometimes he slips back into the vocal style he usually uses, but most of the time he really sounds like a fucking metal singer.
What is possibly a duo of songs to make one message, Planet B and Mars for the Rich, to me sound like they're saying that we can't ruin Planet A because there is no Planet B. However, the rich people will get to go to Mars if we do fuck up the Earth.
Mars for the Rich is another absolutely devastatingly heavy song. It's sludgy and hardcore and totally brutal. Again, the vocals are hard as nails, and there's a lot of experimentation with the guitar effects on this one, especially when it comes to the solo.
True to form to classic thrash metal music, these beats are very boppy while staying very metal, which means that they're really easy to, well, thrash to! I also really enjoy how they break up the lower key rhythm guitars with these high key leads that kind of power through the rest of the song. You know, if I just heard this album, I wouldn't really be able to tell that this isn't their classic genre because they just take so well to this new form. Now with Organ Farmer, they really bump up that BPM. I didn't go into each song and look up the exact beats per minute, but I'm guessing that this song is somewhere in the 220 range, which for King Gizzard is new territory.
This entire album is very jammy with its song structure. The song sounds like a bunch of metalheads just jamming out in the garage. That
being said though, this song isn't a high point on the album for me. It's a little lackluster, and following the first 2 tracks, I think that it is somewhat of a filler.
Yeah, and especially coming off of the last 2 tracks, it's a lot of the same thing at once, so a change up would be a little appreciated at this point in the album.
I did think that the ride cymbal blast beats near the second half were really fun though.
After that song, they tone it back down with a slower track, Superbug. The song is drony, sludgy,
and I'm getting some psychedelic metal influences on the beginning with that wavy intro.
The song is like a slow, marching chant.
I really like the eerie silences that they throw in there where all the other instruments just go dark and you just hear the bass and it goes down, 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 and then they blow back into the main riffs.
This album is chock full of those palm muting, slow, brr, brr, brr. You know what I'm saying? A lot of those on this album, and they're good. After that is the song Venusian. The song looks like it's part of a 3-song trio, Perihelion and Venusian 2. Not sure if the middle track there is involved or not, but it is sandwiched in between the 2-parters. So I kind of like to look at it as a 3-song thing. Venusian
1 does a good job of splitting up the heavier overdrive guitars with these interjecting, cleaner power leads, which I mentioned before on some of the opening tracks, but really comes through on this one.
The song is kind of like if Queens of the Stone Age was an 80s metal band. It's got that same kind of funky beat that they do. My only gripe though is it does get a bit repetitive. After an entire album of this same kind of sound, I would have appreciated something a little bit different.
However, if you look at a lot of the classic thrash metal albums that King Gizzard is clearly trying to be inspired from here, you will notice that repetitiveness is kind of part of the genre. For example, Slayer's Rain and Blood is a very repetitive album, but it's beloved. I also want to say that at this point in the album, I'm really impressed with how his voice is holding up. He clearly took a lot of work to get his voice to sound right for this type of music, and you gotta be impressed with how he sounds still this late in the album.
Can you move over a bit? You're like pushing me right out of the camera. Sorry. That takes us to the Perihelion. Probably saying that completely wrong, but Who knows? Not much to say about this. It's a heavy rock jam, a little bit forgettable, but as I said earlier, it acts as an interlude between part 1 and part 2. As for Venusian 2, it's classic thrash. This is definitely the most headbanger song on this album, and there's a lot.
You got that really scratchy rhythm guitar where it sounds like they're just rubbing their fingernails on the strings. To me, this is one of those tracks that you want to listen to when you're doing something active, like working out or beating the shit out of somebody. It'll really get you pumped up.
I thought they were gonna say beating off. And because I'm the party pooper, I will say that the song does recycle a few elements from the earlier tracks. The guitar parts are getting a little similar.
And throughout the album, they've been switching up the instruments that they choose to include in those little silent breakdowns. And on this track, it's the drums. Whereas on Venusian 1, it was the bass.
Now, Self-Immolate has a very epic build-up opening. If they weren't going to use Planet B as this album's opener, this would have been the best track. And boy, do you gotta love that blast beat.
Yeah, like Connor said, you got this grimy, bloody intro. That's almost scary. I think I shit my pants. The intro to this song with the breaks and silences reminds me a bit of another band I really respect, Royal Blood, who's always been really, really good with intros to songs.
It's definitely an album of pump-up tracks for sure.
The album closes off with Hell, which unfortunately for me is a pretty forgettable track. It doesn't have much variation, and to me it just sounds like another song that they used to raise the BPM count of this album. However though, the production and the type of music that this is, it is very fitting, and you know, it's an enjoyable song to ride to.
Overall, it does work as a big closer as it does come to a big, eventful ending. There's a ton going on. It turns into one big mess of sound, which makes the title Hell very fitting for this hell of a song.
The album as a whole, I'm very impressed with how King Gizzard executed this type of project. You can't just ask any rock band to perfectly imitate this type of music, and I'm not saying that they're copying anybody. I'm just saying that the influences are clear, and it's really impressive how in 4 months, well, I'm sure they were working on it longer than that, but in the short amount of time they had, they made this type of project, which is a complete honorable callback to really good classic thrash metal.
There really are only a few bands out there that are able to play so many genres and do it so well. A lot of the time when a band tries to experiment with a genre that isn't their home sound, it turns into a complete mess, and it comes across as fake or forced. But these guys sound like they've been making this music for the past 25 years. If I didn't know anything about music and you told me this was one of the forefathers of metal, I would believe you. Is it up there with Black Sabbath and Motorhead's classics? Absolutely not. But I'd say it's within the same league.
You know, metal being very close to my heart, I could see myself disliking a project like this because maybe I would think that it's unoriginal. But unoriginal isn't the word that comes to my mind when I hear this album. I'm actually just very pleased with the solid project in a genre that they're not known for making.
And I feel like listening to their earlier work, you could always tell if the band would have been capable to do something like this. As I mentioned earlier, there was little hints of metal. They've always been great at riffs. They've had some heavier songs in the past. So it's not even necessarily surprising that they were able to do this, that they wanted to do this, and that they did it so well.
I can definitely see myself listening to this album for a while. I think there's a lot more to unpack the more times you listen to it.
And I think when it comes to a metal album, it has everything you want in one. It's got the fast beats, the palm muting, the rough guitars, the rough vocals, classic riffs. What more could you want?
And nothing on this album comes off as contrived or arrogant to me. It just seems like they put a lot of work into something that they were passionate about experimenting with.
I'm going to give this album a 79. I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to go back and listen to this a lot. And I feel like this is one of the albums that I wouldn't mind getting on vinyl. I
gotta agree with all that. For me, this album's an 81. I'm also going to be listening to it a ton. Also wouldn't mind getting it on vinyl. And in the landscape that we're at today with music, there isn't a lot of really good metal coming out. Of course that you have, you know, certain bands that are pretty tried and true. So to see some new stuff from a band that you wouldn't expect it from is, it makes me very happy.
Thank you for watching this video. Please leave a comment letting us know what you thought of this album.
Make sure to check out our other reviews and drop a subscribe. See you next time.